Donnie and Dolly. The team is supported by ableauctions.ca. Closing your business? We can help.
Okay, a special announcement coming up in the next half hour or so.
Yep.
In the meantime, all of our guests today, including Elliotte Friedman, standing by. Brought to you by our friends at Passant Motors. Car running like the Predators or Leafs or any of the teams that have been knocked out in the first round of the Stanley Cup playoffs. Or maybe the Milwaukee Bucks in the NBA.
Yeah.
Time to hit them up for the push, pull, or drag trade-in event. $4,000 minimum for all trade-ins. $4,000. You got a beater, Rick?
Used to.
When you're up in Fort St. John?
Oh, boy, big-time beater.
Visit Passant Motors, BASANT Motors.com as we bring in from Hockey Night in Canada and the 32 Thoughts podcast, Elliotte Friedman. Elliotte, thanks for doing this, sir. How are you?
I thought that conversation was better than anything we're about to have. I'd like to hear more about Rick's old cars.
75 Mercury Bobcat. That was the beater I had to start.
Datsun 210, Elliotte, was what I had. Datsun barely got up the hill in Powell River.
Come on, Elliotte. You must have had an old car.
No, I didn't, but I remember my older sister did. She had one in high school, and when she sold it, she got $20 for it. I said, you should be proud.
Yeah.
Because for you to drive something that's only worth $20, like that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, the fact that it moved was a big deal. Hey, big news today, at least we think it is around Vancouver, because he was such a gentleman when he was here and continued to be and was before that. Rick Bowness hanging him up after 26 NHL games, coach, no longer the head coach in Winnipeg. Those over 2,600 NHL games. Elliotte, I think it's the most games coached by anybody, if you include being a head coach and an assistant coach. What's his legacy?
Well, his legacy is of a tremendous coach. I told this story today earlier with Merrick. I'd actually forgotten about it. When he was an assistant coach in Tampa Bay, he didn't think he'd ever get another chance. He thought he was hoping for another chance, but you remember, like, he started off in some really tough situations, like Ottawa in their first year, and you get kind of tagged with that, even though a lot of what happens is out of your control. And he burned for another chance, and he got it in Dallas, and he took them to a Stanley Cup final, and he got it in Winnipeg, and he was really proud to be coach of the Jets. He loved it, and he gets to leave on his own terms. I'm happy for him. I'm going to miss him around. I hope he ends up doing some TV. He'd be great at it. Him and Bieksa yammering away at each other and telling stories of how awful the other person was when they played and coached together would be fantastic. But every time I talk to Rick, I learn something, and it was really, he made me a better broadcaster. There's still a long way to go there, Donnie, but he definitely helped me in a lot of ways.
Yeah. You and Kevin are doing a pretty good job, just so you know. And you can imagine what it would be like if Rick joined the fray. Hey, Peter DeBoer, now 8-0 in Game 7, Stars advance against Vegas. Peter DeBoer, who, by the way, was traded for by the Canucks back in the 80s, Rick, your favorite decade. Yeah. He's bounced around quite a bit, but he's never out of work. What does he do well as a head coach?
Well, I think there's a couple of things there, honestly, Don. Number one, I think he's incredibly demanding. But number two, I think he's a great coach. And I asked somebody about that once. How come Peter DeBoer has been in so many places? And, the first time he went, he left the OHL for Florida, and that was in a team in a tough spot at the time. And I heard he was really demanding. And what he told me once is he learned the lesson of, and he was reminded of this lesson. He said he kind of forgot, and he learned it the hard way, is that, you're nothing without good players. No matter how good a coach you are, you have to have good players. And he said he was really reminded of that, and you have to create situations where good players can be successful. Now, I think one of the reasons he's moved around a bit is he can be very demanding. Mm-hmm. He can be very tough on his goalies. But I think a lot of players will tell you he also brings out the best of them. And it's a really fine line. I think really good coaching, Donnie, is a lot like really good being a boss of media people. You have to know how to bring the best out of them. And sometimes you have to put the thumb down and you have to really grind them. And sometimes you have to motivate with the velvet glove. And I think that he really sees the game. He really knows the game. He really knows how to recognize who's going well and who isn't. But he's also very demanding. And sometimes demanding coaches, they have a bit of a shelf life.
Elliot, every playoff, there's always one player that captures the headlines, and everyone's talking about in Vancouver Seelovs. 3 straight appearances, a shutout, and a series-clinching win. What about this guy and the job he did in the Nashville series?
I thought you were going to talk about Wyatt Johnston there.
This is Vancouver, Elliot. And you're the number one guy that Canucks Twitter loves, so we're going to talk Vancouver. Seelovs, what are your thoughts?
First of all, I like that Canucks shirt you're wearing today, Ricky. And secondly, let me just say for Canucks Twitter, guys, there's still more than 48 hours to the game. Don't exhaust yourself before the series begins. This is going to be a long series. Don't tire yourself out before we even start.
Yeah, it's
don't get
crazy.
Canceled. Don't get canceled before we even start. I would say that, first of all, I learned this when years ago, Darryl Walker, the coach of the Raptors, had a line I really loved, and that is that one man's injury is another man's opportunity, right? And it sucked for Demko, and it really crushed him. And I'm sure the Canucks fans, when they heard it, they all felt deflated. Woe is me, we're doomed. But there's a reason that Seelovs is a pro, right? There's a reason that he's in the NHL, and that's because he has the chance. He doesn't have Demko's ceiling, but it doesn't mean he can't be a really good goalie. And, I give him a lot of credit. Like DeSmith, too. DeSmith also had the opportunity, and he ran with it. He won you guys a big game in Nashville. And then he gets hurt, and Sheelov takes in, and now Sheelovs is running with it. I think, what that says to me is both those guys have big brass ones, Ricky. They had every excuse to lose. Every excuse to lose. Oh, no, Demko's we're done, but get rid of the ball.
Uh-oh. We've lost Elliotte. He dropped out? Okay, we'll try to get him back. I just thought I'd point out, too, that that's not a Canuck shirt you're wearing.
I know, I don't.
It's Under Armour. It looks it's a shade of Canuck blue.
The old, it's a little shade of it.
Yeah.
Are we going to get Elliotte back or not? They're working on it?
Well, one thing we want to talk to Elliotte about is the Leafs. And I know people might not want to talk about that here in Vancouver.
Core 4, Donnie?
Well, there's got to be some significant moves, I would think, in the offseason. Maybe Sheldon Keefe, but the name that keeps coming up is Mitch Marner. How are we doing with Elliotte? Okay. He's trying to get back?
Well, you hear Shanahan could be in trouble in Toronto. 8 straight years playoffs, 7 out in round 1, 0 for 5 in Game 7s. They scored 12 goals in 7 games, Donnie. They 1 for 21 on the power play. The Maple Leafs were second highest scoring team in the NHL during the regular season. Only 1 goal behind Colorado.
Yeah.
And then it comes to playoff time and they can't score. Mm-hmm. They can't score.
Yeah. But, what a comeback to force a 7th game.
Big time.
Go, Rick. Take it away here. Elliott's back.
Elliotte, there you are.
Where were we?
Guys. Fat fingers. Sorry about that.
No problem.
We're talking about Sheelovs and how
Elliotte.
Him and DeSmith, they both showed big brass ones to do what they did, and the Canucks rallied around them. They deserve a lot of credit. That was a hell of a win. That was a great series win for Vancouver. Played great.
Elliotte, any intel on Demko and if he could be back in round 2?
You hear a lot of swirling, conflicting stuff. Rick, the one thing I always say about in the playoffs is everybody lies. When it comes to injuries, everybody lies. And, I was told when I was younger that lying was bad. But when I get into the NHL playoffs, I kind of understand it because, people who say that other opponents don't target injuries or it doesn't become a strategy in some way, that's a lie. It does. And the goalies are a bit different, obviously, but information is hard to come by. The one thing I always say is this. Tampa Bay said that they would have to go deep into the playoffs for Sergachev to show up.
Yeah.
And he showed up in Game 4 of the first round. So what that says to you is that a lot of these timelines are smoke screens. That's number one. Unless they come right out and say a guy's not playing, even then I take it at 95% the truth. A lot of these things are smoke screens. Players will always try to come back earlier than they can. Look at another one, Eric Cole, 2006 Stanley Cup Final. We were told he was out for the year. No chance he was playing. And he shows up for Game 6 and 7. So I think, put it this way, I think at best, sometime mid to late series. At worst, he doesn't play, but be ready for anything.
And quickly, Elliotte, the Leafs are out. What's the most likely significant off-season move for that hockey club? The names, Sheldon Keefe and Mitch Marner are being bandied about.
Well, I watched Keefe today, and he really seems to think that you could tell, like he feels it. I would just say this. I think he did a much better job this year than he gets credit for, especially with all the injuries on defense and in goal. And I think if he ends up going somewhere else, he will thrive. And maybe this clip, I think he will be I think he is a good coach, much better than he gets credit for. And I think that he will be successful if he goes somewhere else. I think that the fact that the management isn't speaking until Thursday says to me that they wanted to take a deep breath before doing anything rash, and we'll see how this unfolds over the next 2-3 days.
Okay, thanks for this, Elliotte. Did your sister sell you that computer for $20? Any chance?
No, I told you. Somebody called me, and I tried to hit don't accept or send to voicemail, and because of my fat fingers, I hit the wrong button.
Yeah, we've all been there. We'll talk to you in a couple of weeks. Thanks, Elliotte.
Okay.